Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring one of the biggest turning points in economic history, the moment when classical economics rose up and replaced the old mercantilist worldview. This story is not just about theories. It's about how nations understood wealth, how they thought economies worked, and how a completely new way of thinking reshaped the world. Let's dive in. To understand classical economics, we first need to travel back to 16th and 17th century Europe. This was the era when powerful nation-states were emerging. Kings, armies, and empires were expanding, and as these nations grew, so did one big question: what makes a nation truly wealthy? At the time, almost everyone believed in the same answer, an idea system called mercantilism. Mercantilism dominated European thinking for nearly 300 years. According to this view, a country's wealth was literally the amount of gold and silver locked in its treasury. So naturally, governments felt they had to tightly control trade, production, and even people's consumption to accumulate as much of these precious metals as possible. In their eyes, wealth wasn't created, it was collected. One of the core beliefs of mercantilism was bullionism, the idea that a nation's power rested on its stockpile of bullion, meaning gold and silver. So the logic became simple: export more goods, receive gold in return, and avoid imports that would cause gold to leave the country. If gold was flowing in, the nation was succeeding. Because wealth was measured in gold, governments became deeply involved in shaping the economy. They offered export subsidies, added import taxes, set up colonies to serve as controlled trading partners, and outright banned exporting gold. They pushed people to buy local goods and restricted foreign ones. In short, the government didn't just guide the economy, it tried to steer every part of it. By the late 1700s, a new generation of thinkers, classical economists, looked at all this and asked, does this system actually make sense? Their answer was revolutionary. No, wealth doesn't come from gold. Wealth comes from the ability to produce goods and services. They argued that the economy works best when markets, not governments, guide production. This was the birth of classical economics, and it turned everything upside down. Classical economists believed that real wealth comes from labor, capital, and technology, the real factors of production. An economy grows not because gold enters or leaves, but because people produce more, innovate more, and build more. Money was seen simply as a means of exchange, important for buying and selling, but not something that directly creates prosperity. Here's where classical economists took a firm stance. They believed that markets have natural self-correcting tendencies. Competition ensures efficiency. People pursuing their own interests unintentionally promote the interests of society, and as long as markets are free, supply and demand will find their own balance. So in this worldview, government interference usually causes more harm than good. Mercantilists believed that increasing the money supply, meaning more gold, stimulated demand and helped production grow. Classical economists strongly disagreed. To them, money had no intrinsic value. If you doubled the amount of money in circulation, all you do is double prices. Real production wouldn't change. So relying on money to stimulate the economy was seen as dangerous and misguided. Mercantilists feared that if governments didn't encourage consumption, goods might pile up unsold. Classical economists, especially John Stuart Mill, rejected this fear entirely. Mill famously argued that production itself creates enough income to buy whatever is produced. In other words, there cannot be a general shortage of buyers for all goods. This is the essence of what later became known as Say's Law, on which we will dive deeper in the next video. Classical economists firmly believed that, when goods are produced, income is generated, and that income becomes someone else's spending. So aggregate demand naturally rises to match aggregate supply. Therefore, governments do not need to step in and boost overall demand. The market takes care of it. From these debates, two defining ideas emerged. First one is that real factors determine output and employment. That is, money doesn't influence real production in the long run. Second is that the economy naturally tends toward full employment. That is, if disruptions happen, markets correct themselves quickly. These ideas shaped classical thought for over a century. Classical economists weren't naive. They knew economies could face temporary downturns, but they believed these downturns corrected themselves fast, so government policies designed to stimulate demand or manage the economy were viewed with suspicion. In their eyes, such interventions often caused more instability than stability. Now, classical economists built a model to explain how the economy works. It had two sectors: the real sector, determining output, employment, real wages, real interest rates, and the monetary sector, determining prices and nominal variables. Crucially, these sectors were separate. This is called the classical dichotomy. The idea behind this concept is that money affects prices, but not real production. We will deal with this concept more in the upcoming videos. The classical model also relies on several strong assumptions, such as people are rational, which means they try to maximize utility or profits, and no one suffers from money illusion. That is, people only react to real money changes and not nominal money changes. Markets are perfectly competitive and prices are fully flexible. This part we will see in upcoming videos. Everyone has perfect information. A fictional Walrasian auctioneer sets prices so markets always clear, and expectations of people are stable. They believed that under these conditions, full employment is guaranteed. We will see why these assumptions play such an important role in further videos of our macroeconomic series. A major takeaway of classical model is money is neutral. Changes in the quantity of money only affect nominal variables, like prices and wages, but they do not change real output, employment, or real wages. This was a cornerstone of classical economics. So if we summarize classical thinking, we will be able to gather that wealth comes from production, markets self-correct, government should mostly step back from the economy, money doesn't influence real outcomes, and full employment is the natural state. This paints a very optimistic picture of how economies function. But this optimism met a major challenge in the 1930s. During the Great Depression, unemployment persisted for years, not weeks or months. The classical belief in fast, automatic self-correction failed to explain what was happening. This set the stage for John Maynard Keynes, who argued that economies could indeed suffer from prolonged demand shortages. Classical economics laid the foundations of economic thought. It broke away from mercantilism and emphasized production, markets, and rational behavior. But the Great Depression revealed its limitations. Keynes stepped in and rewrote the rules, giving birth to modern macroeconomics. And that's the story, from mercantilism to classical economics to modern macro thinking. See you all in the next video.